Anti-Corruption Commission has begun investigations onto potential money laundering and abuse of office in the contractual dispute between business people Wicknell Chivayo, Mike Chimombe and Moses Mpofu over the supply of election materials to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission.
Here's an example of Rombe. One of Marombe ari padhuze anoya mumusoro mangu ndi Wicknell Chivayo. Irombe is a typical example of a person in whose hands is money which he doesn't know its value. But of course that money is not his. He has no business that can give him money to buy cars for everyone.
Commissioner Mlobane said they had taken note of a letter purportedly written by Mr. Mpofu and Mr. Chimombe to a South Africa-based company, Renform, demanding payment and resolution of a contractual dispute. The Commission has also noted audios allegedly attributed to...
Welcome to Open Secrets Radio, a podcast about power and profit in pursuit of truth and justice. I'm your host, Mamello. In this episode, Open Secrets and the Sentry delve into the latest corruption scandal engulfing Zimbabwe. At the heart of the scandal is an inflated tender for the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission, referred to sometimes as ZEC, a falling out between three businessmen and a South African company.
What I said is bring new work. Ndakachibata kuti dzvi kwete zvekufungidzira.
On the 16th of June 2024, Zimbabwe's Anti-Corruption Commission released a statement confirming that it would be interviewing Moses Mpofu, Mike Chimombe, and Wicknell Chivayo to gather more clarity and information on leaked audio and a letter exposed by Zimbabwe's media which raised issues related to money laundering and abuse of office. The leaked documents and audio in question suggest that South African printing company Renform inflated the price of ballot papers, biometric voter registration kits, and portable toilets for Zimbabwe's 2023 election, while its politically connected partner, Wicknell Chivayo, made payments to mystery officials. In one instance, Renform invoiced the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission 23 million rand for a server which normally costs just 90,000 rand. The total cost of the inflated tender was a whopping 570 million rand. Renform and Chivayo are accused of inflating costs by up to 235%. The Newshawks, the Zimbabwean media outlet which broke the story, claims that the total paid to Renform could be up to 1.8 billion rand. That is, 100 million US dollars. We spoke to Newshawk's news editor, Owen Gagare, to give more background into the story.
Wicknell Chivayo is an ex-convict. He's a convicted criminal. I wouldn't want to call him really a businessman because I'm not sure what business he does, but he's a tenderpreneur.
Just then, you will have heard Owen Gagare refer to Wicknell Chivayo as a tenderpreneur. A tenderpreneur, according to Wikipedia, is actually a South African colloquialism. And the University of the Western Cape describes a tenderpreneur as a business person who uses political contacts to secure government procurement contracts or tenders, often as part of reciprocal exchange of favors or benefits. So I asked Owen and Open Secrets' head of investigations, Michael Marchant, to explain what a tenderpreneur is, since this is so central to understanding state capture in South Africa and Zimbabwe.
There is a whole cohort of business people that have identified state contracts as the way to pursue wealth and prestige, and that those contracts very often involve allegations of kickbacks and corruption.
Tenderpreneurs, like in the same context, will be people who are making money through government tenders. So basically, they use their connections to government to win tenders and they are normally paid in advance for services that in most cases they don't even provide. Then they act as third parties, get a partnership with companies or providers of those services, and they charge a markup.
What is maybe most disturbing about those cases is the knock-on effects that they no doubt have, that it's not only a story about self-enrichment on the part of the tenderpreneur, but it's also the implication about what happens on the other side of the tender that the tenderpreneur receives, and whether there's any value, service, or anything that ultimately gets delivered that should be.
Wicknell Chivayo is a tenderpreneur. He's well connected. He's connected to the highest offices in the land. We at the News Office, as a team, started following this story just before the elections, to be sure. We had heard that he had got a massive tender, windfall from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, and we're wondering what kind of tender that would be, because as far as we know, he is not involved in anything to do with elections in terms of maybe supplies and so forth. So we had an interest in that because he did not have experience in election-related matters. He then brought in one Moses Mpofu. And Moses Mpofu is an IT expert, and he had previously worked with the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. Mpofu also brought in his friend Mike Chimombe. They worked together in these state tenders and so forth. But they didn't have money to fund the operation, because when they agreed with the Renform of South Africa, each party was supposed to meet its own cost, meaning that for them to travel to South Africa, for example, we have meetings to prepare tender documents and so forth. Each party had to do its own part. So the gold magnet, Scott Sakupanya, was brought in to bankroll these operations.
Scott Sakupanya is a ZANU-PF MP and the owner of Better Brands Jewelry. He was featured prominently in Al Jazeera's documentary Gold Mafia about the illicit gold smuggling networks in Zimbabwe.
He brought in some money, so you could see that there were a lot of people involved in the tender, but all of them, like Scott, is very close to the president as well. Is now a ZANU-PF legislator. And so it was high-ranking people, well-connected people involved.
The links between the individuals implicated in the story is laid bare on social media. In an Instagram video, Wicknell Chivayo posts himself filming a white Rolls-Royce Ghost, which he declares he is now gifting to his best friend, Scott Sakupanya.
My ghost has to go. My ghost, goodbye to my ghost. Today is Resurrection Day, and the Lord teaches us to love one another. So the ghost has to go. I've given it to my best friend, who happens to be a ZANU-PF MP, Scott Sakupanya Shumba. Congratulations. This ghost is now yours. That's why my charger is there.
Alongside all the videos and photos of Chivayo jet-setting around the world and gifting luxury cars to ZANU-PF supporting musicians, his Instagram is littered with a plethora of videos and photos of him with Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa. In the audio, leaked as part of the story of the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission, you even hear Chivayo claim that Mnangagwa calls him my son.
Paenda kuItaly ndakasvika kuairport patabatwa roko my son ndiperekedza kusvika padhoo rendege patafamba mured carpet ndakabatwa roko tichitaura saka usana uchidai ichi saka svika padhoo apedza kumhoresa vanhu apedza kumhoresa mavpr2 kwakusidzoka. I'll phone you when I get to Italy. Goodbye my son. Ashedzera ndege yanga yamutswa. Goodbye my son. I'll call you when I get to Italy.
A translation of the audio reads, "When he went to Italy, I was at the airport and he held my hands and said, 'My son.' Escorted me to the jet's doors and I walked him over there. Once we got to the plane's door, after he had finished greeting the two vice presidents, he returned to me and waved at me and said, 'I will call you when I get to Italy, my son.'" This leaked audio prompted the president's spokesperson to condemn name dropping.
So fortunately also they then fought the quarrel over the spoils when the money started rolling in, and We had some parties like Mike Chimombe and Moses Mpofu feeling betrayed. They then started demanding their share, writing letters to Renform and so forth. They did not leak the story to us, but in the dossier that we eventually received, some of which is now in the public domain, their letters were also quite revealing about what transpired and so forth. So now, when you now have those documents, we got them well before they were in the public domain. But we still had to verify them. We still had to ask people who knew what was going on, whether these were fake, whether these were true. And when we finally got that, no, everything, this is exactly what happened, we then started writing those stories. And after, I think, 2 weeks after we broke the story and made some follow-ups and so forth, some of the documents were leaked. They were in the public domain and so forth.
The leaks from the story were explosive, particularly the voice notes in which a voice alleged to be Chivayo's discusses what sounds like kickbacks from this deal.
Good morning, members. South Africa has received the money, and they said that they want to start off with payments for the 1 million to Better Brands, which is what we had signed the contract for. Then after the holiday, we've been able to engage them because we had agreed to top 7 days. Marisas of money laundering 8 to Tivating as if Manya still would have with mari. So for Easter purposes, I say pressure Tashama Tisre 1 million at this Timbotangago Manya. So as agreed, score total at 350, Inini 150, Mike 150, Mpofu 150, then Moms were to up 100, DG to up 100 to make a total of 1 million and 150 by.
A translation of the audio reads, Good morning, members. South Africa has received the money, and they have said that they want to start off with the payments for 1 million to Better Brands, which is what we had signed the contract for. Then after the holiday, we'll be able to engage them because we had agreed to give them 7 days for the money to go smoothly without money laundering clearance bottlenecks. They don't want to appear like they are going too fast with the money. So for Easter purposes, I put pressure for 1 million to be paid so that we can run around. So as agreed, Scott is going to take 350,000, then 150,000 goes to Mike, then another 150,000 goes to Mpofu, and then Moms gets 100,000, and then DG, we give him 100,000 to make a total of 1 million, isn't it? At the beginning of that audio clip, you hear that the money has arrived in South Africa, meaning that the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission has paid the South African company Renform. But just who is the South African company at the heart of the story? Here is Open Secrets' Michael Marchant to explain.
Renform is a South African-owned and family-owned commercial printing business based in Selby in Johannesburg. For the most part, it's a business you might pass every day doing commercial printing jobs for different companies, but it also has started to diversify into different technologies as well. And as is the case here, this story, it was not just providing ballot papers, but it was producing a wide range of technological goods that were used by the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission. So the scandal that's engulfed the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission is really a typical story of allegations of tender corruption. And so the allegations in this case are that Renform, together with their agent, Wicknell Chivayo, and the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission, that Renform would provide inflated costs for the tender, and that those inflated costs would allow money to be extracted by the middleman, Wicknell Chivayo, to be paid as alleged kickbacks to politically connected individuals in Zimbabwe. There are a few interesting facts that support the allegation, And those are really that there were really inexplicable cost escalations to do with this tender. And so the allegation is that Renform and Chivayo inflated costs by up to 235%. One example of this, the biometric voter registration kits. When Renform first provided that quote to the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission, they quoted $5,000 per kit. 2 weeks later, when they submitted a final invoice for payment, it had more than tripled to $16,000 per kit. And so those are the kind of ways in which, at least the allegation goes, that these tenders were inflated and that money was allegedly used for the payment of kickbacks.
We called Renform to ask them to explain their role in this deal. Here is Century's investigator, Nick Donovan, speaking to Jean-Pierre Doussat, the company's sales director.
Hello.
Hi there, is that Mr. Doussat?
Speaking.
Hi, my name's Nick Donovan. I'm a journalist for The Century. I was wondering if I could ask a question about the allegations that are going on in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, look, unfortunately, those are very false allegations. We've got a non-disclosure agreement with the government of Zimbabwe, and I cannot comment on anything but just to refer you to our attorney.
Yeah, sure, okay. And just to let you know, these are the two. So for your information, these are the two questions.
Yeah.
There's lots of documents floating around, and in a few of them, the quoted price for the BVR kits, the biometric verification voter registration kits, seems to go up from about 5,000 per unit to 10,000 and then 15,000 per unit. And I wanted to know if there was a reason for the cost going up. Maybe the scope of the project has increased or changed.
Well, it's the entire scope, because it's not only the product itself. There's other things included in there.
Yeah. So did it change?
Okay, so it's not what people seem that things like. I mean, we have a bona fide contract. We invoice and we delivered.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it.
No, I understand that. So
people are blowing things out of proportion over here.
No, I understand. So what I'm trying to get at is, did the scope of the project change or increase from the quote to the invoice figure?
Well, in any project, there's changes in the project,
Yeah. So,
yeah. You could even phone the Electoral Commission of Zimbabwe, and they will tell you.
Yeah. So
they've been very happy with what has been done so far. We've delivered on what we've allowed for. What was quoted.
So you've delivered the 250 kits?
Yes, that's delivered service already.
Okay. So, but obviously it was a year ago, but do you know what changed to cause the increase in the price?
Well, there's always changes. We've done not only that, we've done other things as well for them.
Okay. And that.
Let me just see if I can find my phone number here quickly.
Okay. And then forgive me for asking, but I've got.
Is this your mobile number?
Yeah, this is the mobile number. Yeah. It'll be on WhatsApp.
Let me send you the contact on you.
Okay, thank you. And
all right.
Last question.
Let me just have a look here quickly. I'll find it now.
Thank you. So for this gentleman, Wicknell Chivayo, was any money paid to him?
Well, he's one of our agents over there, so there's nothing wrong with it.
Okay. So how much?
Yeah.
He was saying that he received 2 million.
I can't disclose anything to you. Let me put you through to this attorney.
Okay.
Please.
So, Mike, is the idea or notion of confidentiality clauses something that you often find? Is the reason provided by these companies for not answering questions?
The confidentiality clause is an incredibly common response that we received in lots of our investigations. And of course, there is sometimes some truth to that in the sense that there are contractual agreements between different parties. But certainly in a matter such as this, there's no doubt that the law enforcement authorities should quite easily be able to penetrate those issues. And certain if there are criminal allegations, that argument won't stand up in those types of investigations.
South Africa's narrative about Zimbabwe is one that often focuses on the domestic consequences of Zimbabwe's corruption and economic decline. As this story about Renform shows, not enough attention is given to the role of South African individuals and companies in enabling state capture in Zimbabwe.
I think that this story and the other stories that we and others have told about South Africa's involvement shows that we really need to be reflective of South Africa's often central role in corruption and allegations of economic crime that are happening elsewhere on the continent. As South Africans, we often are very rightly critical of the multinational corporations that are implicated in corruption in South African state capture and South African corruption. And we rightly call for those countries to hold their companies accountable for what they do here. What we have to now acknowledge is that South Africa's advanced economy, advanced financial and professional services sector mean that so much trade, business that takes place in Zimbabwe and other countries in SADC is going through South Africa. The money very often travels through South Africa, is filtered through our system. And that, imposes on our corporations and on our regulatory bodies a responsibility to both monitor that and to, avoid being involved in any kind of wrongdoing and corruption. Otherwise, we risk, playing the very same role that we're so critical of other countries. And so this particular instance is just one small case study. I think there are lots of stories that show a much more systemic problem. And, finally, I'd say that it's another reason why South African law enforcement have to investigate here, because it's really incumbent on us and on our state to identify and investigate any actors that are based here, that are complicit or alleged to be involved in any scandals or any wrongdoing happening elsewhere. The endemic state capture and corruption across the board that has been so economically devastating to that country, that has increased Zimbabwe's debt, that has led to so many people not having access to services, to food, to enough resources. That is a tragedy in and of itself, even putting aside the impacts that has both on South Africa, but also all the countries in the SADC region. And so we should care in its own right, and we should also care because of this very serious allegation of South African involvement.
The Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission's case is ongoing, and they are seeking to interview Chivayo. Chimombe and Mpofu have been arrested as part of a separate investigation into the alleged failure to deliver on a contract for the presidential goat scheme, in which animals were supposed to be provided to poor rural households. Chivayo did not respond to a request for comment. Previously, Chivayo has described the leaked voice notes and messages as fakes, and said he was under a sustained character attack from Chimombe and Mpofu. The Zimbabwean Electoral Commission denied doing business directly with Chivayo, Chimombe, or Mpofu, and said that all procurement was above board. With the multitude of leaked materials now in the public domain, and the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission looking into this case, it may seem that there may yet be accountability for this instance of state capture. But Owen Gagare is not so sure.
There's quite a lot of pressure on the government to act on this corruption scandal. But I think President Mnangagwa is the determining factor. Whatever he decides at the end of the day will be done. Will he sacrifice Chivayo? If you ask to order an arrest, you'll be arrested. But at the same time, we are looking at the implications of having him arrested. Naturally, he knows quite a lot because this was during quite a sensitive election and there were so many things that went wrong with the election. And Chivayo by being involved in the electoral material supplies and also his relationship with the chairperson, general of CIO, and knowing that the election was basically run by CIO, he might be knowing quite a lot. So it might not be wise to sacrifice him. And besides, he basically got the tender, but he couldn't have pulled it off by himself, right? The corruption, there had to be facilitation from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. So are you going to then go after those people as well? And for the money to come out, there were senior government officials involved at Treasury and also in the office of the President and Cabinet. So what role did they play? And can you arrest Chivayo and leave everyone else? Yeah. So perhaps it answers why Mike Chimombe and Moses Mpofu are singing the blues over the goat. And while this scandal is being ignored as it is.
And what about accountability in South Africa?
I think, though, that it also raises the point once again of how important it is that South African law enforcement agencies undertake an investigation as well. And of course, because there is an active investigation, it should provide a nice opportunity here for the South African authorities to contact their counterparts in Zimbabwe and say, offer mutual legal assistance, offer information, and offer to join forces. States like South Africa and others often talk about a cross-border commitment to good governance and tackling corruption, but we don't see it in action very often. And so if South Africa wanted to demonstrate that they are serious about tackling these kinds of things, this is exactly the kind of case in which they could help, assist, intervene, provide resources and expertise to help, pursue the case and pursue accountability.
This story was produced by Open Secrets in collaboration with The Sentry. Research by Nick Donovan and Michael Marchant. Scripting by Mamello Mosiana. Sound editing and narration by Mamello Mosiana. Music, Wake Up by Say 3. For more information about this story, see our show notes or visit opensecrets.org.za and thesentry.org. Open Secrets, Power and Profit, Truth and Justice.